This episode contains mature themes. AI technology is used to enhance the listening experience. Listener discretion is advised. In the dead stillness of night, when the world sinks into silence, something ancient stirs at the edge of waking. You open your eyes, but you can't move. The weight on your chest feels crushing. Shadows ripple across the ceiling. A figure stands at the foot of your bed, unmoving, watching. You try to scream, but no sound comes out. For centuries, people around the world have described this same chilling experience, a waking nightmare that blurs the line between science and the supernatural. This is the mystery of sleep paralysis. Welcome to Three Theories, the podcast where we uncover the great mysteries of the world. I'm Elena Hart, your guide on this journey through the unknown. Each episode will examine unsolved cases, paranormal phenomena, and historical and natural mysteries, and explore three compelling theories to help you decide, what do you believe? It begins the same way for almost everyone, in that eerie in-between place where sleep should bring rest, but instead brings something darker. You wake suddenly, but your body won't follow. Your mind screams, but your lips stay sealed. The air feels wrong, thick, electric, charged with something unseen. You can feel that you're not alone. Around the world, people have told this same story for centuries, using different names but describing the same terror. In Newfoundland, they call it the old hag. The story goes that she sits on your chest while you sleep, her wiry hair falling across your face as she leans close enough for you to feel her breath. In the morning, people find no marks, but they swear they still smell the earth on her skin. In Japan, it's called Kanashibari, which literally means bound in metal. Victims describe waking in total paralysis, their minds screaming as they feel an invisible force pinning them down. Some say they see figures at the foot of the bed, others, a pale woman standing near the ceiling. In older stories, monks said it was the spirit of vengeance, the result of a curse or restless soul lingering nearby. In Iceland and Norway, there's the Mara, a shadowy creature that slips through cracks in walls to sit on a sleeper's chest and bring nightmares. The word nightmare actually comes from her. In those stories, the Mara can even twist her victims' thoughts while they sleep, feeding on their fear until dawn. In Brazil, there's Pisadeira, the stepper. She's an old woman with long, bony fingers and dirty feet who climbs onto the chest of those who go to bed too full. Her laughter, they say, is the last sound you hear before you wake up, gasping for air. Parents once used her story to warn children not to overeat before bed, but some adults swear they've seen her crouching on their blankets, eyes gleaming in the dark. In Ghana, people speak of the devil on your back. It's said that when you fall asleep with your mind burdened by guilt or secrets, a dark spirit comes to claim its due. Many describe waking to the sound of footsteps circling their bed, followed by the weight pressing down on their chest. Some even claim to hear whispers in their ear, words they can't quite make out, until the next morning, when something they feared most has come true. In the southern United States, the phrase, "the witch is riding you," still lingers in local folklore. People claim a jealous witch or an angry spirit can slip into your room at night and ride you like a horse, stealing your strength and spirit while you sleep. In old plantation towns, elders told stories of men who woke drenched in sweat, clawing at their chests, certain they'd been visited by a witch who'd promised revenge. Even today, the experiences are remarkably similar. A man in Mexico City described waking in the early hours of the morning to see a shadow standing at the foot of his bed. It didn't move, but he could feel its gaze, heavy and deliberate. It felt like it knew me, he said, like it was waiting for me to stop fighting. A woman from the Philippines said she woke to see her deceased grandmother standing beside her bed, smiling faintly. But when she tried to speak, her grandmother's face shifted, the smile widening too far, the eyes too dark. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. It was like something was wearing her face, she said softly. In Nigeria, there are stories of Ogun Oru, nighttime spirits that torment those who fail to make peace with the ancestors. People describe being pinned to the bed while shadowy figures move around them, chanting in languages they don't recognize. Some claim that if they manage to call on their ancestors' names, the spirits will release them, but only after leaving behind a mark, a bruise, or a scratch. Even those who don't see figures say they feel them, a chill moving through the room, the sound of rustling fabric when nothing is there, the sense that if they could just open their eyes a little wider, they'd see what's standing over them. One man from Ireland described hearing the faint creak of his bedroom door, followed by the whisper of footsteps across the wood floor. He couldn't move, couldn't cry out, and then he felt a hand slide across his throat, slow and deliberate. When he finally woke, the door was wide open. Another woman in Chicago described feeling something crawl up from the foot of her bed. It stopped halfway, then pressed down on her chest. She couldn't breathe. It was like drowning in dry air, she said. When she finally broke free, her cat was hissing at the corner of the room, fur standing on end. And then there's the recurring figure described all over the world. A tall, faceless shadow often called the Hat Man. He appears as a dark silhouette, wearing what looks like a wide-brimmed hat. Victims say he doesn't speak or move quickly. He simply stands and watches. In Canada, one woman said she felt him lean over her, his shadow spreading across her body like smoke. In South Africa, another said the figure followed her from one room to another, even after she woke completely. There are stories of children who experience it before they even know what fear is. A 10-year-old boy in Thailand described seeing a woman in white floating above his bed. His parents thought he was dreaming until he started waking every night at the same hour, paralyzed, sweating, and whispering, "She's back." In modern times, thousands of these experiences have been shared online. Identical stories told by people oceans apart. I couldn't move. I felt something in the room. It was sitting on my chest. No one has to describe the fear. It's understood. That silent, ancient terror crosses every boundary of language, geography, and belief. For centuries, people called it witchcraft, curses, or spirits. But modern science offers a different explanation, one rooted in the fragile mechanics of sleep itself. According to neurologists, sleep paralysis occurs when the mind wakes up before the body does. During REM sleep, the stage where we dream most vividly, Our brains release chemicals that paralyze the muscles. It's a built-in safety feature, the body's way of preventing us from acting out our dreams. Normally, that paralysis fades as we transition to wakefulness. But sometimes, that system misfires. The mind regains awareness while the body remains locked in REM atonia. You're awake, but your body is still dreaming. That split second of overlap can feel like eternity. Victims report being fully conscious, able to see, hear, and think, but unable to move or speak. Their breathing becomes shallow, the chest heavy, as if pressed under invisible weight. And in that vulnerable state, the mind begins to fill in the blanks. Scientists believe the terrifying hallucinations, the shadow figures, the hags, the whispering voices, are the result of dream imagery bleeding into wakefulness. The brain, still half dreaming, projects its fears into the dark corners of the room. A coat draped over a chair becomes a silhouette. A faint hum of the refrigerator turns into breathing. And when the body is frozen in terror, the brain amplifies every sound, every flicker of light, every imagined movement. Neuroscientist Bilal Jalal from Cambridge University has studied this phenomenon extensively. He notes that sleep paralysis often follows disrupted sleep schedules, extreme fatigue, or stress. In one experiment, subjects who were deprived of REM sleep experienced significantly higher rates of paralysis episodes, and almost all of them described sensing a presence in the room. That presence, Jalal explained, may be an artifact of our brain's threat detection system, an ancient survival mechanism that evolved to alert us to danger. When our body can't move and our mind feels exposed, the brain conjures the illusion of an intruder. The fear is real, even if the figure is not. In laboratory settings, EEG readings show that during sleep paralysis, the brain is caught between two states, part of it awake, part of it dreaming. This hybrid consciousness can cause powerful visual and auditory hallucinations, as well as tactile sensations, pressure on the chest, vibrations, even the feeling of being touched or held down. For the person experiencing it, those sensations aren't imagined. They're the result of real electrical activity in the brain. Doctors categorize sleep paralysis into two main forms: isolated episodes, which occur once or twice in a lifetime, and recurrent episodes, which can plague sufferers for years. Some people experience it only under stress. Others develop chronic cycles that mirror chronic patterns of anxiety, depression, or trauma. What makes the scientific explanation so chilling is how precise it is, and yet how powerless it leaves us. There's no guaranteed cure, only prevention. Specialists recommend good sleep hygiene, regular schedules, and stress reduction. But for those who experience it frequently, none of that guarantees safety. You can go to bed perfectly calm, perfectly rested, and still wake up trapped inside your own body. One woman who participated in a Harvard sleep study described it best. "I knew what was happening. I even remembered reading about sleep paralysis. But when it started, none of that mattered. I could feel someone standing next to my bed. I knew they weren't real, and I still thought I was going to die." Even when people understand the science, the terror doesn't go away. Knowledge doesn't stop the hallucinations. It only explains them afterward. And maybe that's why this explanation, as rational as it is, still feels incomplete. Because when the figure steps out of the corner, when you feel its weight pressed down on your chest, the line between science and nightmare blurs into something else. If this is all just biology, if it's all neurons misfiring and chemicals misaligning, why do so many people see the same shapes, the same faces, the same dark man in the hat? How can the brain invent a fear that's shared by millions across time and culture? Maybe the science explains the paralysis, but the shadows, the whispers, the feeling that something waits for you in the dark, that, it seems, remains beyond the reach of medicine. For as long as humans have slept, we've also dreamed, and dreamed of things that feel far too real. While science reduces sleep paralysis to misfiring neurons and trapped consciousness, others believe it is something much deeper, a crossing point between worlds. In this theory, sleep paralysis isn't a malfunction of the body, it's a threshold. Across cultures, people have described the sensation not as random terror, but as contact. The mind, freed from the body, becomes aware of planes of energy that the waking world cannot perceive. Some traditions say these are the hours when the soul wanders, and sometimes something else wanders in return. In many West African and Caribbean spiritual practices, sleep paralysis is understood as an encounter with the spirit realm. The paralysis itself is not an accident, it's protection. The body locks, they say, so the spirit can safely separate. But if that boundary is disturbed, if another energy crosses over, the sleeper feels it as a suffocating pressure or an intruder in the room. In the Philippines, this belief takes the form of bangungot, a nightmare spirit said to pull the soul from the body while you sleep. Some claim that calling on a loved one's name or praying aloud can pull the spirit back before it's too late. Families still tell stories of those who died in their sleep, perfectly healthy the night before, their faces frozen in terror. In parts of the Middle East, the phenomenon is linked to jinn, beings of smokeless fire said to move unseen among humans. Victims often describe seeing shadowy figures, feeling hands on their throat, or hearing voices speaking in tongues they do not understand. In one case recounted by a man from Jordan, he woke unable to move as a deep vibration filled the room. He said it felt like something humming through my bones. When it ended, the scent of sulfur lingered for hours. Energy healers and intuitives interpret these episodes differently. They believe that during REM sleep, when consciousness is most fluid, the mind enters an energetic state, open, receptive, unguarded. In that openness, we can attract or repel spiritual frequencies, depending on our emotional vibration. Anger, grief, and fear may draw lower energies. Calm or clarity may invite guidance instead. Some who've experienced recurring sleep paralysis describe it almost like psychic training, a forced awakening to unseen dimensions. A woman from New Mexico who endured nightly episodes for years said she learned to breathe into the fear until the darkness changed shape. She claimed that what began as a black mass eventually became a figure that offered comfort instead of terror. It wasn't trying to hurt me, she said. It was trying to wake me up. Others aren't so sure. One man from rural India reported being visited by the same figure for months. Tall, faceless, and wearing what looked like a cloak. Every night, he felt the figure approach his bed, pressing its hand to his chest. He said he could feel energy surging through his body, vibrating his ribs, filling his head with static. One night, he decided to stop fighting it. When I relaxed, he said, it leaned close and whispered my name. Those who study energy phenomena believe that sleep paralysis may be the body's reaction to crossing frequencies, a kind of spiritual interference when the human field collides with a non-physical one. This might explain the vibrations, the sense of presence, even the voices. To believers, these are not hallucinations. They're signatures of contact. In some Native American traditions, elders describe sleep paralysis as the soul being caught between the winds. When a person is unbalanced, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, the soul doesn't align properly with the body during sleep. That misalignment creates a gap, and in that gap, other energies can slip through. The cure isn't medication, but restoration, ritual cleansing, grounding, and calling the spirit back into harmony. Even in the modern age, thousands of people who consider themselves spiritually attuned describe sleep paralysis as the first sign of psychic sensitivity. They speak of astral projection, lucid travel, and encounters with ancestors or entities that seem aware of them. One woman in London said that during an episode, she saw her own body lying beneath her, and beside it, a shadow touching her shoulder. It wasn't evil, she said. It was curious, like it wanted to understand what I was. To skeptics, these are coincidences, the brain trying to assign meaning to chaos. But for those who felt a cold hand on their skin, heard voices calling their name, or watched something inhuman stand at the edge of their bed, it feels far too intentional. What if sleep paralysis isn't a defect in the body at all, but an ability? A brief, uncontrollable glimpse into the layers of existence that surround us all the time. If that's true, if these moments are windows instead of walls, then maybe the real question isn't how to stop them, but what exactly is waiting on the other side when we open our eyes but can't move. For those who reject both science and spirituality as gentle metaphors, there's a darker possibility, one that is lingered in whispered prayers, exorcisms, and midnight confessions for centuries. What if sleep paralysis isn't a dream or an energetic encounter, but a direct assault? In this theory, the presence people feel isn't symbolic or psychological. It's literal. The shadow at the foot of the bed, the thing pressing on your chest, the whisper calling your name, they are not projections of the mind. They are entities, ancient and malevolent, that find their way into the world through the vulnerable doorways of sleep. Religious texts from nearly every culture describe such visitations. The Bible speaks of unclean spirits that enter the body and silence the tongue. Medieval priests wrote of night demons, the incubus and succubus, that pinned victims to their beds, stealing breath and strength. Centuries before neuroscience, these accounts were nearly identical to modern descriptions of sleep paralysis. Total immobility, crushing pressure, a feeling of being watched, and the certainty that something evil is present. In Catholic tradition, priests have long debated whether these nighttime visitations could be forms of demonic oppression, lesser than possession, but rooted in the same darkness. Exorcists have documented cases where recurring paralysis coincided with objects moving in the home, sudden temperature drops, and unexplained scratches appearing on walls or skin. Father Gabriel Amort, the Vatican's chief exorcist until his death, described patients who claimed that shadowy figures would appear only at night, first in dreams, then at the foot of their beds, and finally, in daylight. One case from the 1980s in southern Italy told of a young woman who suffered nightly paralysis. Her family reported that they would hear her choking from down the hall, only to find her eyes wide open, frozen in terror. When the priest performed a blessing in her bedroom, the crucifix above her bed fell to the floor, not once, but 3 nights in a row. The episode stopped only after a full rite of exorcism was performed. Modern reports echo these ancient fears. In a rural town in Texas, a man claimed that every night, around 3 a.m., he felt something sit on his chest. He described a shape, small, crouched, with glowing eyes. It breathed like it was laughing, he said. After months of sleeplessness, he invited a pastor to pray over his house. The night after the blessing, the man woke again to the same pressure, but this time it was accompanied by a voice that said, "You can't stop me." Psychologists might call this a vivid auditory hallucination. Demonologists would call it evidence. In Islamic belief, jinn, creatures made of smokeless fire, are said to dwell between dimensions, capable of touching and tormenting humans. Some claim that, during moments of spiritual weakness or fear, these entities find an opening. Victims of jinn attacks often describe the same details as Western sufferers of sleep paralysis, choking, and a crushing weight. In certain cultures, entire rituals exist to ward off such attacks, burning incense, reciting protective verses, or cleansing the home with salt and prayer. The commonality across religions is chilling. Whether called demons, jinn, or spirits of the dead, they all exploit the same vulnerable moment when the body is helpless and the soul is half awake. Some paranormal investigators even suggest that sleep paralysis episodes cluster in locations with documented hauntings or history of trauma, as if the entities attached to those places use the sleeping mind as a vessel to make contact. There are reports of multiple people in the same household experiencing identical night terrors on the same night, describing the same dark figure in the same corner of the room. Coincidence, perhaps, or something collective moving in the dark. Of course, no proof exists, no recording, no photograph, no measurable data. But for the people who live through it, evidence isn't necessary. The terror is real. The bruises, the burns, the voices that echo long after waking, all real enough to convince them that something far beyond human understanding is visiting in the night. And so, we're left with the most disturbing question of all. If demons are only superstition, why do their victims describe the same face? Why do the same shadows stalk us from century to century, never changing shape? Maybe they don't need proof to exist. Maybe they only need us, asleep, silent, and afraid. Thank you for joining us on this episode of 3 Theories. Sleep paralysis remains one of the most disturbing and universal experiences known to humankind. Is it merely a trick of the brain, a waking dream that traps the body in terror? Are the victims brushing against a supernatural presence, aware of something science can't yet define? Or is it possible that something ancient and unseen still feeds on the fear of the living? What do you believe? Visit 3theoriespodcast.com for resources, documents, and additional reading to help you form your own conclusions. Share your thoughts with us on social media and join the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Join us next time as we investigate another haunting case and present 3 more theories for you to consider. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.